Welcome to the How of Business with your host, Henry Lopez, the podcast that helps you start, run, and grow your small business. And now, here is your host.
Welcome to this episode of the How of Business. This is Henry Lopez, and my guest today is Jessica Zoraida. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Henry. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, on this episode, we're going to focus on accounting and tax considerations for small business owners. Jessica is with me today to share her inspirational journey, and then we're going to get into tax and accounting tips and guidance for small business owners. If you want to get more information about the How of Business podcast, including the show notes page for this episode, and to learn more about my coaching programs, please visit thehowofbusiness.com. I also invite you to consider supporting this podcast on Patreon. And please subscribe wherever you might be listening. Please subscribe to my show so you don't miss any future episodes. So let me tell you a little bit more about Jessica. Jessica Zoraida is an entrepreneur, a speaker, and an investor in women and person of color-owned companies, and the CEO of her own business, Big Picture Results Incorporated, which is an accounting and tax company that helps small to mid-sized businesses bring more to the bottom line. With over 25 years of experience, Jessica has learned hands-on best practices across corporate banking, government, and small business. She is passionate about sharing knowledge and strategies that allow us to live our best lives as entrepreneurs. Jessica's management style balances corporate excellence and reliability with candid, emotionally healthy, and joyful communication and accountability. Jessica lives in the Vista, California area, which is outside of San Diego, I believe. So once again, yeah, that's what I thought. I looked that up on the map because I had never heard of Vista. Jessica Zoraida, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
All right. Excellent. I got so much I want to talk about, but I always like to start with the journey, and yours is, of course, particularly interesting and interesting to me. From the Bronx, as I summarized it, growing up, to Vista, California. Tell me a little bit the highlight. What's the story about your early childhood and growing up and in the Bronx and where you went to school? Give me the summary of that, if you would.
Yeah, so I have had the difficulty and blessing of having a very humble beginning. Grew up in the Bronx, raised by my abuela, who from Cuba. She had a third grade education. So as you can imagine, I didn't have not only financial resources, but I didn't have the education or sounding board at home. And it just wasn't a very rosy place where I grew up. But I had the benefit of always being hungry and seeing a bigger picture for myself. I've spent my entire life getting learned up with a lot of, falling and getting back up along the way, because I've always felt this sense in my spirit of purpose and being called to not only do for myself, but to sort of pay it forward in a real way. Not having financial resources for those of us that are either the new majority or grew up in inner city, I didn't have a safety net. So all of the first that I've had to achieve was because I had to. It was on me at the end of the day. And that very sense of, knowing what struggle is all about has translated today after me getting learned up, right? Being the first to go to college, to grad school, working in corporate banking for almost a dozen years, and now being my own person. All of those hardships are lessons that I've not only integrated and transmuted into my whole life, but I literally am able to translate that into how we serve our clients, being able to connect at that human level with small business owners, right? We might not really know, what path to take. I'm really able to not only give them that practical experience because I've been there, but that understanding that a lot of us need, that human touch, that someone understands and sees you. And it's that little spark, right? That some of us might need to just take things one step further.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. So, so both your parents Cuban?
My mother. So, my mother and my abuela came when my mom was a teenager. Yeah, never knew my dad. I just had a very strong sense of, spirit and groundedness from my abuela, though she didn't have that educational background. She instilled in me, old world values from, keeping me in line to teaching me what respect and hard work is, to even forcing me in the kitchen, which is something that today, um, it gives me that sense of family and home.
Right.
That has always been my platform for jumping off and making a big life.
Yeah, I'm a son of Cuban immigrants as well, so it's particularly
Nice.
interesting to me now. Now my family ended up in Miami. Some of us ended up in New Jersey and the Bronx and all over the place. But obviously, I
Yep.
understand. I understand that journey. I got to think that then for you, the focus of getting out of that, as far as from an economic perspective, was education. Was that what the path was that you knew about or that was presented to you?
100%. My life story, and it, even today, where I just took a teaching job at California State San Marcos and it's a community where over half of that college population are first generation.
Mm,
The ticket is education, whether, going to school, getting learned up, right? Getting a work experience, to having the availability of information at our fingertips the way we do now, right? With podcasts and having so much, juicy, startup and business information at our hands, so that it's there. As long as you're hungry and you're willing to do the work,
right.
right? Sky's the limit for us.
Yeah.
And I've always been a big believer of that. So much so that I'm using my own life story to not only inspire like young kids, but really pay it forward for those of us that need it most.
Do you think, though, now, at least when you give guidance to young people, do you recommend if they want to go the entrepreneurial path, they just know they want to have their own business? Do you still think it's worthwhile or makes sense to get a formal education first, or what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, that's a tricky question. I think it really depends on the human being. For me, um, I didn't have many life choices, right? My ticket out of the BX was to get learned up, go to college. That was my ticket. I ended up getting a scholarship out of high school. And doing so well in college landed me a corporate job. But I only knew that as my path. I
Right.
knew I had to get a well-paying corporate job because my eye was only on being financially secure at that time. Very
Did you
different
did
than,
you have
yeah.
aspirations of being a business owner at that time or no?
No,
It was single
I,
focus, get the education, that's what's going to get me out of here and
yeah,
be able to help my family.
I didn't even have that on my radar, to be honest. I didn't even understand what entrepreneurship was until I went to graduate school and I minored in entrepreneurship. And that's when the
Mhm.
wheels got turning,
I see.
that I might have this skill set. I think the most important thing for young people, if they do want to go the entrepreneur route, give it a go. But like anything in life, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, we gotta have a plan B. Yeah.
Practical education's key. I'm never going to say college is for everyone and you have to go to college, because there's people that, are diligent within their own right. They might have entrepreneurs in their corner, sounding board. They might not need to go to college if they're hungry and they're able to just hustle and be a natural entrepreneur. But for everyone else, absolutely having, a base education, it gets your foot in the door. For me, being a Latina, I've worked really hard to smooth around the edges. In order for me to get that job in corporate, to put me on the path to eventually being my own entrepreneur, I had to go to college. There's no doubt in my mind that I would be here today if I
Yeah, you,
hadn't.
you were not going to get any break otherwise. You were not going to get an opportunity otherwise in that world.
Yeah. And unfortunately, first impressions are everything. For those of us that are the new majority, we have to sort of play the game. And when I was starting this business, which is my third business, um, and really going the consulting route, right? Sort of like boutique CFO and CEO advisory. I'm not going to lie. If people look at my resume and they see that, she went to graduate school at NYU, like that's building a brand. People are going to look at your credentials always first and foremost. So it might be a ticket to getting your foot in the door. It's just balancing it all with your own unique position. So it really is a personal decision.
I want to go back to the point of the safety net. Do you have children now?
I have a wonderful 11-year-old daughter who has a very different lifestyle than when I was her
Exactly.
age.
So where I'm going with this is this was a challenge for us as well. We have one daughter. She's 25 now, lives in Manhattan, by the way. And, the whole thing of the safety net, that's what fueled us, right? That lack of that safety net, that fear of not having that. We had no choice but to persevere.
Right.
We look at money in a very different way, I think, sometimes. And so, but we didn't want that for our kids, right? Like our parents did for us. We wanted to give them that next level up. What do you say though, and what have you tried to instill in your child and in other young people that you influence, as to where does that motivation come from? Do you understand the question I'm asking? Because
I
they
do.
don't have that, right? They have a safety net,
They don't have
and
the pain.
right, and we want them to have a safety net, right?
Right.
That's what we worked for. But now
Right.
we've taken away for us. We use that as fuel. What fuels them, do you think?
Yeah, this is a tough one. Because for those of us, right, that like you and I, we get what it means to struggle, and trying to explain to my daughter, no, I'm not going to buy you this because everyone else has it.
Right.
It's a very different conversation
It
than
is.
I can't afford it. Like, no, conversation over, right?
Right.
They don't understand the struggle. So now, good on us, right? We're doing it right by
Of
being
course.
able to give them, a very different lifestyle that we grew up, but they don't have that pain. So one of the things I try to do, and my spouse and I talk about this all the time, how can we create artificial pain for them?
Mm-hmm.
And it's holding them accountable. Like, just because everyone, in your middle school has this or that, I'm not going to buy it. You have to earn things. I expect you to do your part in the house. You're part of a team here. And I'm absolutely, giving old world Cuban lady strict vibes, but values are really important to me. And I teach my daughter that not only am I leading by example, but I expect her to hold herself accountable in her actions, because my job is to prepare her for being a good human being. And it is kind of painful sometimes when I have to say no or hold the
Right.
line or take something away. But I believe over time, as long as we're being communicative and speaking from the heart, and a big learning lesson for me was I can't get frustrated with my daughter because she doesn't appreciate and have the same gratitude as I have,
Right.
because she has a very different story
Yeah,
than me.
it's
So,
not possible. She has a
right, she's
different
never going to know.
experience. Yeah.
So I stopped saying, well, when I was your age, or, if I did this, my abuela would,
Yeah.
I don't have those conversations with her anymore. I lean more into, how can she learn and step up being an emotionally intelligent human being.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Thanks for sharing that. And thanks for indulging that question. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Let's shift into business a little bit more here. Thanks for sharing that journey. Very
Yes,
inspirational. We could talk about that for hours, but
I know.
accounting and tax, let's talk about that
Let's
now.
do it. The juicy stuff.
The juicy stuff. So, I've had numerous CPAs on and accountants on, and so that's why some of these questions might sound a little bit different. But nonetheless, I'd like to get your perspective on what I've asked everybody, which is what are your recommendations for small business owners as to how to leverage, when to engage the different financial services? Let's start with bookkeeping, through accounting, and then through fractional CFO. In your experience and recommendation, when should a small business owner hire a bookkeeper or outsource to a bookkeeper? What are your thoughts? Let's start there.
Yeah. So for whether it's bookkeeper, accountant, or CPA, I think it's going to absolutely depend on the stage of the business. And with regard to the business, how soon they can afford or are profitable enough that they can hire or outsource these key services, especially if they're not good at it, right? If it's a business where the owner like loves accounting, like fine, like go for it, dude. But for most of us, that's not our expertise. And in order to generate good business, you have to focus on what you're good at and outsource the rest. With the stage of business, I would say startups, it's critical to do things right from the beginning so that you're compliant, you're making sure you're employing best practices and setting yourself up for success, but without over engineering it, right? Maybe you don't hire, the firm for this full on package, which includes fractional CFO, right? Maybe you just need bookkeeping and accounting so that you can do the tax prep, which is going to keep you compliant.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's very practical. And I agree with that. And I should have said at the outset, I completely agree with you. My recommendation always for anybody starting a business, you've got to invest in consulting with a CPA before you get started. You're going to get invaluable advice, but maybe let's go off on a tangent there. What are the types of things that if I'm looking to start my business, that I'm going to be able to talk to or should talk to my CPA about those kind of decisions and how I'm going to set things up? Maybe it's
Yeah.
choice of legal entity. Just give me at a high level, what are the things that a CPA can help me with in that stage?
Yeah, at that stage, one, I would lean into a CPA that understands tax strategy. So I just want to point out, right, there's a lot of CPAs out there that might be good at tax preparation, but they're not able to look at the financials or have a conversation with you based on your goals. This is what should be done, right? What kind of business are you in? Understanding both your financial goals and the potential legal implications of what you're doing to really fit you into the appropriate legal entity. A business like myself that's services based and most of us are behind a desk, I have a lot lower legal liability than a construction company, which absolutely has to consider, right, moving away from the smaller legal structures into something more like an S corporation or a C corporation, where it's a separate corporate entity outside of the owner.
Mm-hmm. And so you touched on an important thing there. When I'm consulting individual CPAs to hire one, I'm assuming the way that I look for someone who has that tax strategy ability is, are they asking me those kind of questions? Are they taking me down that path? That's what'll tell me. And hopefully I can discover that in that consultation. Most CPAs, in my experience, do some level of free consultation. So I look for those things to find that type of CPA. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, I would say as a, business owner, whether you're startup or already existing, we could take startups, for example. What's your business? What are you looking to do? Are you, things like, are you looking to raise capital, right? Taking on shareholders? Are you looking to make a lot of money, potentially exit? So that's going to allow me to understand, okay, if you're looking to raise capital, the best way to do that is going to be a straight corporation. You can't do that, right, if you're just an LLC, unless you're going to go equal partners with everyone. And also looking ahead on the tax savings perspective, right? Everyone wants to pay, as little tax as possible if that's going to benefit them. But what a good, professional, whether it's a CPA or a CFO, needs to ask is, well, what are your long-term goals? If you're looking to not only raise capital and potentially exit this business, you're not going to have the same objective of wanting to reduce, right, your tax liability at the end of the day, because a potential buyer might not find that attractive or might not think you're a premium buy. So it's really, and I know this is hard for startups, like what's your 5-year plan at least in this thing so that I can really fit you in the appropriate legal structure, which then dictates how we're going to set up accounting and visibility on your firm. And nothing's set in stone. You're always, in most cases, able to restructure one way or another.
Right, right. I think that's a big misconception that people think like I'm having to make the ultimate decision here that's going to last me forever, and that's not necessarily the case in my experience. Yeah,
That's the beauty of entrepreneur. There's
yeah.
always a pivot,
Always a
right?
different way to adjust. So I want to go back to the point you made about so we've established, and my recommendation and yours as well, you have to consult with the CPA as you're getting started. Now, hopefully that's the CPA that you stay with, or at least that initial stage. But you touched on, if I like doing the accounting, I happen to be one of those people that likes to do the accounting
Same.
for my business, of course, for my business now, which is simple transactionally, no problem. I do think that, and I want your thoughts, I do think that certainly if it's more complex, or as your business gets more complex, it's something that you want to delegate, but not surrender responsibility for. And I think there is the mistake sometimes. People say, well, I'm not good at the financials and
Yeah.
I don't even look at my P&L, right? So that's where we have to be careful. So what's your guidance to
Yeah.
small
No,
business owners? Yeah.
I love that you brought this up. So yeah, we're never gonna throw our hands up and, turn a blind eye to whatever the CPA is doing. You should expect regular, ongoing, proactive communication. You should be meeting for sure by the middle of the year, if not at least quarterly, to understand, based on your existing financials, how are things going to shake up so that you can make money moves before the end of the year. And with the CPA in particular, right, are they protecting your data? Are they thinking ahead as you continue to grow your firm, because maybe they're filing taxes and they're seeing you're making more and more income? Are you diversifying? Do you have a variety of verticals and services? Well, then the next question to me would be, what would it look like if I carve out some of these verticals or different lines of businesses as subsidiaries, because maybe I'm starting up one or two of these. I don't want to sacrifice my profit of my primary business. And if you take, the ability to sort of stepping back and really leveraging into tax law with legal structures, right? The parent-child relationship. There's a lot that you can do around really bringing more to your bottom line.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I want to go back to the topic of finding a CPA, because that's been a particular challenge for most of my clients here over the last couple of
Yeah.
years. My understanding, tell me if this is what you're hearing as well, is there's just a shortage. There's less and less young people going into finance. Is that what you're observing as well? That there's just
That is
less CPAs?
that unfortunately is a struggle. There are dramatically less going into the, profession, going to school for this than even, a decade ago. A lot of, established CPA firms are sort of aging out.
Right.
We've been seeing the writing on the wall for the last few years. And at the same time, you have large software firms, trying to do the thing using
I see.
AI.
Right.
And it's always going to be my position that we can absolutely use AI to automate and make us more productive, but you need the human touch, right?
Absolutely.
There are very few spaces that, we don't have room for error, right? If you make mistakes, it translates into dollars and cents out of your pocket. And you need to have such a handle on your financials where you have a back and forth with your CPA, proactive ahead of time, alerting you to changes that might potentially be something you can take advantage of.
I was going to say that I'm pro AI, so it's not like we're bashing AI. AI is going to
No,
do wonders on the transactional side of things.
it's a
But
beautiful tool,
right, but
but
what I need from a CPA at the next level is those hard decisions, the things that are not black and white. Well, you could consider this. Well, you have this implication. Well, if you do that, there's this potential exposure. Those are the things that right now I need that from a person, from a CPA.
absolutely. And, taking the proactive approach, as long as you're getting, obviously good, tax preparation and, strategic insights, us as the business owner, so that we might not, to your point, be the one doing it day in and day out, but you better make sure you're getting timely financials that tell the story. And then, because financials are reactive and after the fact, develop some sort of scorecard or a set of metrics for yourself that you're on top of, right, on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, so that if something starts going wrong, you have the opportunity to course correct sooner than later.
Right. Yep. Okay. So one more thing on finding a CPA. What is your advice as to how people should go about finding a CPA the first time? Like I always recommend, local chamber of commerce, certainly a referral. Maybe you have an attorney who can refer you, other business owners, who are they using successfully? Are those the routes that we should take to find a CPA?
So my favorite strategy is absolutely leaning on your personal network. And you hit the nail on the head, leaning into those professionals such as attorneys that already have your potential clients, right? Because if you enjoy them, you trust them, you share values, right? That makes the job so much easier, right? With regards to the subject matter, this is really personal, you know, I'm seeing everything once we, right, look at your firm and do your accounting and taxes. So the trust needs to be there, right? That the value system as well as the skill set. And it needs to feel like someone that is a partner to you, that's going to collaborate with you. I don't recommend, randomly finding a CPA or an accounting firm. You should be able to ask them for prior referrals, businesses that they've helped, how they operate, who's going to be working on your books, right? Especially in this day and age where we're able to leverage the power of AI and offshore talent. You want to be really clear on the integrity of protecting your data.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's great advice. This is Henry Lopez, briefly pausing this episode to invite you to join me for one of my next live online workshops. During these interactive workshops, I cover a specific topic that will help you with starting and growing your small business. Just visit thehowofbusiness.com to learn more and to register. If you need help creating an effective business plan, for example, to start your first small business, then my next business plan workshop may be just what you need. Or perhaps you need help completing your financial projections for your new business. Well, I have a workshop for that too. And if you're already operating your business, then you can probably benefit from learning how to better manage the cash in your business by attending my cash flow management online workshop. These are just a few of the workshops that I currently offer, and I keep these workshops to a small number of participants so that we have the time to answer all of your questions. Whether it's getting started with your first business or growing and exiting your existing small business, I can help you get there with one of my online workshops. To find out more and to register for a live online workshop, please visit thehowofbusiness.com. Take that next step today towards finally realizing your business ownership dreams. I look forward to having you join me for my next workshop. All right, let's talk about fractional CFO. I had not heard that term until maybe a few years ago, is thereabouts, 5 years ago. Let's say my head maybe was a little buried, but this is a new thing, relatively speaking, and for small business owners. In other words, it was never affordable or even something that was packaged that way.
Right.
But
right.
now here it is, and it's all part of outsourcing and leveraging virtual teams and all of that, which is fantastic. Here's the question I have for you. When, generally speaking, what are the things that I look for that might tell me I might be ready to consider a fractional CFO?
Yeah, that's a good question. So a fractional chief financial officer is essentially that executive function that looks at the data and financials of your firm to understand the story, give you visibility so that you are then dictating what your future behavior should look like. The easy answer, like when I need to hire a fractional CFO, is as soon as you have some surplus cash and you want to grow. It's going to be a lot more cost effective than hiring, right? A full-time CFO. Like we're talking, 6 figures to $250,000 a year.
Absolutely.
Most small businesses, you're not going to, it's not worth the ROI. So that fractional solution is a great option for a lot of businesses because, for a few thousand to, 10, 20, depends on how deep you go with them, how big your firm is, right? Are we talking just strategy and goal setting? Are we building in the accountability piece or implementation? You have a part-time person on your team with a wealth of knowledge and experience. And the best part is, in my opinion, they're serving you, but they don't work for you the way an employee does. So guess what? They're going to be objective and tell you what you need to hear.
Yeah,
For
brilliant.
business owners, I think that's one of the most important things that we can do, surrounding ourselves with a team that is competent and objective. They're gonna give you the skinny of how you can not only get the visibility in your business, but how do you get more profitable?
Yeah, I love that. No, that's such a great takeaway. And related to that, one of the things that I see is always valuable is they continue to have that perspective of best practices. What are others doing? At a high level, no confidential stuff, but they see, different scenarios. They can still bring to bear, well, this is how I've seen others do it, or this is how similar businesses are doing. Once you have somebody in-house, we become siloed. We start to only see what we do, right?
Mhm.
So that varied background that continues is extremely valuable to us as a resource as a small business owner. Okay, perfect. That's what I wanted there. Let's move on to a couple of next questions.
Yes.
Common mistakes. What are some of the things that you see that small business owners make especially on realizing or limiting their ability to realize tax savings? Let's start there. What are some of the things that you see?
Yeah. I think it's going to come down to focus. So if the business owner is rushed and really being owner operator, right, and running around putting out fires and trying to do all the thing, right, we can't focus on everything. It's super important to, right, work with a professional or sort of offload those things that you're not good at so that you can focus on making bank and getting more money in the door, and you let the professionals do their thing. And also being humble enough as a human and a business owner to action on the guidance that you're provided. What's the point of hiring these professionals if you're not going to do what they recommend anyway?
Mm-hmm.
Also, one of the things that and I'm sure you see this a ton too, a lot of small business owners, and I get it, you know what I mean? You want to put your family on, your peeps, right? But if, Pablo over here isn't a CPA or not an accountant or has no kind of experience, he shouldn't be doing your books, right?
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't be doing your taxes just because, that's a cost effective or you think you're doing like your family a favor. That's not going to help you in the long run. You have to work with a tax professional that is adept not only at tax strategy and the potential savings, but to really grow with you along your journey as you make more money, as you expand into businesses, and the legal implications of what you're doing might change. And then the last thing that, business owners would shoot themselves in the foot is failing to become compliant because they're not filing timely, right? They're not
Yeah.
filing accurately. Maybe their financials, are just not being done and they slap it together at the end of the year. If you're putting bad data in with bad financials, you're going to get bad output. And the worst thing that we want to do is file an incorrect tax return or incomplete tax return or things that just don't make sense because you didn't have a CPA looking at it and be like, whoa, are you really spending, 15% on, I don't know, meals and entertainment or travel, and like your business that just doesn't make sense with? Like, you're going to get flagged by the IRS if you're not doing things right. And in my experience, we've seen that once business owners get flagged for an audit, the likelihood of that repeating goes up.
Interesting. Yeah. All right, great. A lot of great actionable items there. Certainly some of what resonated with me is making sure you don't have just anybody on roles like financial side of things that require expertise and knowledge. Just because, your wife has always done the back office doesn't mean that she shouldn't get help. if that's not her expertise or his expertise for that matter, if the roles are reversed. Taking the guidance of these professionals that you hire, listening to the CPA and applying those best practices. And then, the letting the financials become a mess is a pervasive challenge. And I get that. I have, many clients who, when I first start with them, that's the case. I get it. And I get that it's overwhelming and it's an area of shame. And if we just ignore it, like maybe we do our personal finances,
Uh-huh.
I'm not passing judgment, but that's what happens, right? What I have found to the T to every single one is once you start to get your arms around it, get some help, and you start to get your arms around it, boy, the relief that I see with them, where they're,
Mhm.
okay, we can fix this. And a CPA can help you fix that. If you haven't filed or your books are a
Yeah.
mess, we can clean those things up, right?
Yeah, that's such a good point, Henry. Because for those of us that don't come from money, you hit the nail on the head, right? We're gonna have limiting beliefs around money.
Correct.
One of the workshops that I do regularly focuses on the new majority, like an accelerator boot camp. And I always start out, let's talk about money mindset. It's not bad to want money, right? Money makes lives easier. But for those of us that don't come from it, we don't know how to handle it, the shame associated, like to your point, looking away, that is not a good strategy. Yes, you want to hire good professionals that are going to do their thing and set you up for success, but you also, even in that engagement, you trust it's all being handled, awesome, but you can't blindly trust, right? I want to make the point of whenever you're working with any professionals, you can never give up control. There has to be checks and balances because these professionals, using our firm as an example, we have access to your bank accounts, your credit card. I got all the things, right?
Right.
If you're using an accounting software, the firm shouldn't be the one controlling it. Because what if, like you don't want to work with them anymore, right? You still have to maintain a sense of control, having a good checks and balances in place so that everyone's held accountable and really providing the platform for truth and transparency with a regular rhythm tied to accountability.
Agreed. Well said. All right, since you touched on it, I want to go off on a tangent for a moment and see what
Mhm.
your thoughts are from a money mindset perspective. One of the things that
Yeah,
I see is such a challenge, and it's not like, it's been a while for me, so I forget that I had to go through it as well.
right.
But when we think of personal finances and what we're brought up to believe is that, debt is a bad thing. And it is. Consumer debt is painful. It
Yes.
erodes our buying power. All of those things are true. But debt can be a good thing when we're leveraging it in business, especially to build the asset that is our business.
Yep.
How do
Yeah.
you help people? But I still find that people are like, I don't, I'm afraid of debt and I don't see it. I don't understand it. And even when I show them the numbers, here's, the ROI is better if you borrow to a certain degree than if you put in your own money.
Right.
How do you help
Yeah.
people start to make that transition mindset wise to not always look at debt as a bad thing, depending on
Yeah.
how you're using it?
Ah, this one hits close to home for
Does it?
me.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm one of those people that thought debt was a bad thing.
Mhm.
Like many college students, where I was working and kind of juggling and like, Papa, the credit card gets dangled. You're like, oh, I could buy
Mhm.
stuff. I could
Right.
live a good lifestyle. I don't have to worry about it now.
I can have it
And
now. I can buy it now.
it's amazing, right? But, not having that education or sounding board at home, like you could get in trouble real quick. And flash forward, right? If you're not responsible and reckless, like anything, right? Like relationships with people, if you're not treating this thing with care, it's gonna bite you. Credit and debt for sure. Again, it's let's lean into the discomfort. Let's break this thing down, understand, the game of credit, right? How to play the game and get your credit score up so that you can afford debt at a lower cost. Debt whether it's credit cards that a lot of us, personally leverage when we're getting our businesses off the ground, to further along in our business journey, having a line of credit or a business loan. If you're using it responsibly and you're making it a point to maximize the ROI or the return on investment, or I like to say return on intention of that cash you're getting from debt by spending it on the appropriate places. And this is going to be people, right? Because you need a team to make the money and grow the thing.
Yep.
Process, right? We talked about AI, automation. How can you make the machine work as efficiently as possible? And maybe you spend a little bit of marketing, right? I learned this lesson. My first biz was a restaurant in New York City, as you can imagine, what a learning lesson that was. And I moved away, it was my first venture. I moved away from the number one rule in entrepreneurship: focus on what you do well. Yeah, we had great food, great community, but I spent too much on my furnishings, right? I spent too much on the decor. And these are things I realized after the fact, that flash forward, 15 years later, when I'm working with startups and business owners, we have a plan of how you're going to use that cash.
Right.
And with debt or credit specifically, the best time to borrow, as we know or not know, is going to be when you don't need it. Stock your coffers, build some cash. And yeah, you're going to have debt on the books, but I'm going to come up with a plan for you. We're going to do some cash flow planning. We're going to do some projections so that you have a plan in place how that money you're borrowing is going to make you more money, so that you are not only servicing that debt with ease, but now you're growing your profit. You have to have a plan, and that framework is going to, eliminate that nervousness, that fear. As long as we have a plan and we're like, okay, I can do this thing, jump. You just have to be thoughtful and practiced, and always willing to re-examine and course correct as needed.
Love it. Love it. Thanks for sharing those insights. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right. One final question, and then we'll move on here. If I am that business owner, very typically, again, no shame in it, that my financials are a mess, let's just call it that. Where do I start? And this is an existing business owner we're talking about. Where do you recommend they start to get their arms around that and get it cleaned up?
Yeah. Like any of these situations, just start today, right? Take a step back. We're gonna need some time to really look back. Well, how did I get here? Reflect. What are those things that you need to fix? And kill what's not working. Be willing to start over as needed. The biggest struggle or conversation is going to be that with ourselves, right? A lot of us like the way we do things. We might be maybe stuck in our way.
Right.
You got to be able to, give yourself a little, slap in the face, look in the mirror and like, listen, in order to succeed or make this thing develop some forward momentum, I'm willing to listen and I'm willing to collaborate with those that know better than me in the things that I need help, right? We're talking about emotional intelligence and owning up to the fact, right? There's so much that we don't know. You couldn't tell me anything in my 20s. I was in corporate banking, making six figures. I thought I was like everything. I thought I knew everything. Now I'm in my late 40s, and the more mature and more likely I am to examine myself, I know that there's more that I don't know, and I'm hungry to continue sort of digging in and having people shine the light on me. My team, I love my team. They think I'm part-time crazy because I'm like, no, I want to hear the good feedback and the bad feedback from everyone in my life, because that's how I get better.
Yeah, no, agreed. Well said. All right. Summarize for us, give us a summary of the services that you currently offer, and if someone's interested, what should they do?
Yes. So big picture results. We are an accounting, tax, and strategic advisory firm. We work with business owners in the range of $2 to $10 million, sometimes a bit larger, that need support in developing their goals, their vision, and we will guide them along every step of the journey of implementation and accountability so that they are making more money and bringing more to the bottom line with more ease, so that the entrepreneur or the business owner has freedom to work on the biz, not in the business.
And you offer I think you call it a discovery chat if somebody's
Yes.
interested in learning more, right?
Absolutely. So yeah, if you go to our site, bigpickresults.com, there's a link on the homepage for a 15-minute discovery chat with myself. And during that discovery call, we get right down to your pain points, your goals, and I'm going to give you a quick diagnostic with 1 or 2 actionable items that you can implement straight away.
Wonderful. Wonderful. All right. I know you are a big reader. We've talked about learning and lifetime learning, or lifelong learning rather.
Always.
Yeah, of course. Give me one book, one book that you would recommend for small business owners?
So it's going to be a business model heavy book called Traction, which talks about the entrepreneur operating system. And it forces us to look at key areas in our business, whether it's vision and strategy, process, people, and the focus of what we spoke today, financial, looking at the data.
Traction is, so I always ask this question. It's in the top 5 here over the last 7 years of recommended books. I have them
Sure.
looking at it on my desk, as you are as well. So it's a great book. And one of the things I'll say about it, I'm curious as to your thoughts. It's a book that don't expect that you're going to read it and you're going to apply everything in it at once, especially
Right.
depending on the size of your business. But what I have found, I have several clients now that are at different stages of implementing EOS. What's
Yep.
great about it is you can start with pieces of it. You don't have to go all in all at once. Has that been your experience as well?
100%. I think with any resources that come across our desk, right? Don't obsess and think you have to put everything in your brain, right? There's so little that we retain. I think with Traction specifically, another really important tidbit I want to share with everyone, specifically looking at the financial or the data section, lean into that because there's a lot of mistakes that I see first-time business owners making. One of them being something I harp on a lot during presentations on financial statements. A very novice mistake when we're looking at financials is to only look at the profit and loss statement, where you're only getting half the picture, right? Your profit and loss or your income statement tells you how much are you making? Are you making good money at that thing that you do? You need to also look at your balance sheet, which, right, where we're talking about debt, it shows you, well, what are those things that you own? How much do you owe? How much service do you have? How much debt do you have to service? And more importantly, the equity. Who are the owners of your business? You must look at both the profit and loss and the balance sheet in tandem, because you could make money all day, every day. But if you're so overly leveraged and you have so much debt and you gave away too much of your company, guess what? Those are the owners of your future profits. So you really have to do a good job of stepping back, understanding, well, who are the owners of my company? And is this in line with my goals? Yes or no? And, adjusting accordingly.
Excellent. All right. So speaking of kind of summarizing, what's the key takeaway or two from this conversation that we've had about accounting and tax considerations for small business owners? What's at least one thing you want us to take away?
Yeah, I would say my number one is financials and the data need to be your number one compass. You need good data to understand your company and to dictate future behavior. Good accounting, right, is critical. And you can trust, but you also have to verify, right? Lean on your intuition and your gut, but you've got to be data driven.
Agreed. Otherwise, to me, it's like navigating blind. Not that you can't if you're blind. You know what I mean? Without
Yes.
having that input, you're steering blind. You don't know where you're going, and you can't course correct to your
Right.
point earlier. You
Yeah.
have to have that. It's so amazing to me how much small business owners struggle by this. Well, I just look at what's left over in the bank account at the end of the month, and
Uh,
struggle and
we all
struggle
do
and
that.
struggle. Oh, I had to put in more money this month. That's not what it's supposed to be, right? And so you need that financial data to help you navigate and determine, is this a viable, workable business model?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Tell us again where you want us to go online to learn more, and also to schedule a discovery chat with you.
Yeah, thank you, Henry, for this. This has been a pleasure. So our site for Big Picture of Results is BIG, PIC, results.com. And if you click the link to a 15-minute discovery chat right on that homepage, I will meet with you and give you 1 or 2 actionable items on a diagnostic for your firm.
Wonderful, wonderful. And if you're listening to this where you can't write that down and you forget it, just go to the show notes page for this episode at thehowofbusiness.com, and I'll have the link as well to her site so you can schedule that appointment. Excellent. So this has been a wonderful conversation, Jessica. Thanks so much for
Yeah,
being
it's been a
with me
pleasure.
today and for sharing all of this knowledge and your inspirational entrepreneur journey, which we just got to scratch the surface on. But thanks for being with me today.
Thank you, Henry. This has been a really fun experience.
This is Henry Lopez, and thanks for joining us on this episode of The How of Business. My guest today again is Jessica Zoraida. I release new episodes every Monday morning, and you can find the show anywhere you listen to podcasts, including at The How of Business YouTube channel and the website, thehowofbusiness.com. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to The How of Business. For more information about our coaching programs, online courses, show notes pages, links, and other resources, please visit thehowofbusiness.com.